Your Excellencies, let us jointly demand that former colonial powers acknowledge historic crimes, offer meaningful reparations, and dismantle structural and systemic injustice. This summit is a watershed moment and should be a turning point towards our collective aspiration. Historians will certainly put on record that from Addis Ababa, Africa and the Caribbean renewed their covenant to honor our ancestors, to uplift our descendants, and reclaim our shared destiny in freedom, justice, and unity. The African Union stands proudly and firmly with our Caribbean brothers and sisters in every step towards reparatory justice and true liberation. I thank you.
You are holding this important summit under the theme Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit of Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. In this connection, I would like to recall the statement of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the 30th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union, held in February this year here in Addis Ababa, in which he said, and I quote him, "The world must never forget that Africa," and to this I would like to add the Caribbean, "is the victim of two colossal compounded injustices. Firstly, the slave trade. The roots stretch back centuries, and the bitter fruit continues to affect Africans and people of African descent to this day. Decolonization alone in itself was not a panacea. Political independence did not free countries from structures based on exploitation and decades of economic, social, and institutional underinvestment. It is high time for reparatory justice frameworks to be put in place. Secondly, Africa and the Caribbean were under colonial domination when today's multilateral system was created, and that injustice endures.
Ancestor of humankind and the cradle of both history and culture. It is therefore fitting that we gather here today on this soil to affirm our shared origins and chart a path toward our common future. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this summit carries immense meaning. It is more than a diplomatic engagement. It is a family gathering and reunion across the Atlantic. Africa and Caribbean share not only history of struggle, of resilience, of liberation, but also a vision for sustainable development, for peace, for prosperity, for all our peoples. Through today's sessions, this high-level gathering provides a unique opportunity to deepen our cooperation. In particular, it underscores our joint commitment to advancing reparatory justice for Africans and for the African people descendant, ensuring that historical wrongs are really taken into charge. And now, it is my honor to tell you about the program, Excellencies. Concerning the program, we will first hear from Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, who will deliver her opening remarks. After that, this will be followed by a statement from His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Next, we will hear from His Excellency Tedros Drew, Secretary General of the United Nations, we'll hear from His Excellency Drew, who is Prime Minister for Kings and Nevis and the actual chair of the Caribbean Community. Next, we will hear from His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and this will be followed by the remarks of His Excellency Parfait Onunga Ayenga, who is on behalf of the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. And finally, His Excellency João Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, will address us.
Hello and what's up, good people? What's up, brothers and sisters? Welcome back to the channel and welcome for another interesting video. I hope you're doing great from wherever you're watching this video from. So in this particular video, what I want us to talk about is we want to delve into a very crucial, very important meeting that has just concluded a few hours ago from the time I'm making this video. But depending on the time you're going to watch this video, so there was a high-level summit that took place on the 7th of September 2025 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in Africa. And the summit was the AU CARICOM summit, which, of course, this is actually the second of its kind. The first one took place back in 2021, but that was a virtual one. Remember, that time was the height of the Corona period. So this was actually the first physical one ever. And the AU CARICOM Summit, which is a high-level meeting between AU, that is the African Union, and the CARICOM, the Caribbean Community, bringing together leaders from these regions, with the aim of strengthening political, economic, of course, cultural and historical ties of Africa and, her descendants. And I'm saying this is a very crucial meeting, very important meeting at this particular time in history, because as we all already know that Africa and her descendants, so Africa and Black people, I can say, have always been marginalized or, have not been, taken into consideration in matters global affairs. But now we are rising up as Black people, as Africans, and saying, no, we are not going to be spectators anymore. We want to be key players, because that's exactly where we belong, to the high table, to the center of the high table. So this is very important, because it might be a small step, but a very crucial step into the unity of Africa and her descendants, Africa and all Black people, into the unity, the unification of Black people at this point in time, in which everybody is really lobbying for their own selfish interest. I took very keen interest into this summit, and there was a lot that was talked about. There's a lot we got to learn from it. That is exactly what I want us to just briefly also discuss in this particular video, to get to know what these people were talking about, in this very meeting. Now, I want to share this video, a little bit about this video. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a summary and an analysis of what really occurred or transpired in this meeting. So I'll see you on the other side of this video.
So without further delay, it is my distinct privilege to invite His Excellency Carla Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, to deliver her statement. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will stand on the protocols already established and express my immense pleasure to be here this morning. It is my pleasure to address you as we convene this second CARICOM Africa Summit at the headquarters of the African Union here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on Africa CARICOM Day 2025. I express our deep gratitude to the government and people of Ethiopia for their warm hospitality and the excellent arrangements in place for this summit. Our appreciation also goes to the African Union Commission for its support and collaboration as we together prepared for this engagement. This historic event is our first in-person gathering, as the inaugural summit in 2021 occurred virtually. I am moved by its significance as leaders from the African continent and the African diaspora, the sixth region of the African Union, assembled to build on the foundation of our shared history and the fraternal bonds forged by our forebears. For the Caribbean community, this summit on the African continent represents a homecoming. For centuries, our peoples were separated by an ocean, by a colonial system, and by an international economic order. Nevertheless, we have remained connected through an enduring spirit and a shared heritage. This shared heritage, informed by a horrific range of violent displacements and the ensuing struggles for freedom and self-determination, has produced a vast diaspora of people of African descent, defining themselves differently, yet all looking to Africa as our historical birthplace. This gathering is a tangible manifestation of our commitment to bridge the divide. Indeed, we are not merely building a partnership, we are reaffirming a familial bond. The first summit meeting generated commitments to collaborate in areas such as health, mass media, transportation, trade and investment, and in reigniting people-to-people contact. In the years since then, CARICOM and the AU have worked to bring our regions together. We have begun to operationalize the CARICOM-AU Memorandum of Understanding, which puts in place a supportive institutional mechanism to support the development of our partnership. We have launched the Health Development Partnership for Africa and the Caribbean and drafted an action plan for its first year to fulfill our shared goal of enhancing our capacity to meet health sector development needs. Yesterday, the second meeting between CARICOM and African Ministers of Health was held, concretizing the foundation for ongoing active engagement and collaboration. Similarly, CARICOM's partnership with Afreximbank is deepening with the establishment of its Caribbean headquarters in Barbados and the hosting of the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum in 4 CARICOM member states since 2022. These initiatives address priority areas for both CARICOM and Africa, and this cooperation will contribute positively to sustainable development and facilitate better livelihoods for our people. Yet there is still much more to be done. In particular, we must explore the opportunities for joint advocacy on the reform of the international financial infrastructure, which we have grounded in the Bridgetown Initiative, and on the necessary responses to the destructive impact of climate change that's increasing vulnerabilities both in the Caribbean and on the African continent. This is a climate change that the Caribbean and Africa do not bear the responsibility for. We, together, account for approximately 6% of the global emissions that cause the global warming that fuels climate change, but we are bearing an inordinate burden of the impact. With regard to the challenges of transportation between the Caribbean and Africa, there are initiatives that we need to work on, such as the Multilateral Air Services Agreement, and I look forward to further discussion in this regard. We have already seen positive action on the bilateral front, such as the joint venture between Antigua and Barbuda and Nigeria for LIAT 2020 to ply routes in the Caribbean, providing necessary inter-island connectivity for the movement of goods and people. Increased trade and investment by our private sectors remain urgent and critical if our 2 regions are to attain the development potential that is both necessary and possible. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there is undeniable potential in the growing partnership between Africa and CARICOM. Further solidifying this partnership would stand as a testament to the enormous benefits of South-South cooperation, which has become an urgent necessity given the rapid changes in the international order. It also reflects the reality of our contemporary world. Just decades ago, many of our countries fought for independence and faced great hardships in our movement for self-determination. Most are only now raising their first and second generation of people who will have no personal recollection of colonial rule. We stand today as a bloc of developing nations determined to secure a prosperous future for our people. We recognize but are undaunted by the challenges ahead of us, for we recognize that our combined strength is a formidable asset. The theme for this summit, a transcontinental partnership in pursuit of reparatory justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, is particularly timely as the international community observes the second international decade for people of African descent, which began in January of this year. It is also significant that the African Union has designated 2025 as the year for justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. The CARICOM Reparations Commission has been at the vanguard of this movement for more than a decade, providing intellectual leadership and global advocacy on this critical issue, including engagement with African communities in Africa and in the diaspora. This summit notes the injustice of colonial rule and the transatlantic slave trade and acknowledges that we must be unified in our demand for due compensation for the exploitative practices that traumatized and disadvantaged millions on both sides of the Atlantic. I anticipate that the mechanisms which will be established to concretize collaborative work on reparations and the declaration emerging from this summit will send a powerful and decisive message of cooperation and determination. Heads of state and government, ministers, colleagues, this assembly is guided by the Pan-African ideals set out by iconic minds from the Caribbean and from Africa, with Marcus Garvey, Patrice Lumumba, George Padmore, Jomo Kenyatta, and Kwame Nkrumah among them. As the summit commences in the Nelson Mandela Hall, here at the African Union headquarters, a short drive from the Adwa Center in central Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, I have good reasons to feel that the outcomes of this summit will, in the spirit of our ancestors, be a historic moment contributing to the deepening of CARICOM Africa relations. Happy Africa CARICOM Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your efforts in favor of consolidating the Africa-CARICOM dialogue. Now allow me to invite His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver his statement. Excellency.
Excellence, Monsieur João Lourenço, Président de la République d'Angola, Président en exercice de l'Union africaine, Excellence Dr Abiy Ahmed Ali, Premier ministre d'Éthiopie, Excellence Monsieur Terence Drew, Premier ministre de Saint Kitts and Nevis, Président du CARICOM, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, chefs de délégation, Monsieur le représentant du secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Madame la secrétaire générale des CARICOM, Mesdames et Messieurs, je suis très honoré de vous souhaiter la bienvenue au siège de l'Union africaine. Ce deuxième sommet Afrique-CARICOM représente un moment de communion et de retrouvailles. Au sein de la grande famille africaine de Cape Town au Caire, de Cap Gardaview à Aruba, dans les îles sous le vent, nous partageons des racines communes. Une identité plurielle et des cultures abreuvées par une histoire millénaire. Certes, des destins parfois écartelés par les injustices du passé. La traite négrière, l'esclavage et la colonisation ont bouleversé le cours de cette histoire commune. En effet, ce deuxième sommet Afrique-Caraïbes se tient sous le thème « Partenariat transcontinental en quête de justice réparatrice ». Il s'agit en premier lieu d'un appel à l'unité. C'est aussi un devoir de mémoire et de souvenir à léguer aux générations futures. C'est enfin une obligation de reconnaissance des crimes commis à l'encontre des peuples africains. La repentance seule ne suffit plus. Les revendications de réparation sont légitimes et permettent de pallier aux souffrances de nos ancêtres et de combler les inégalités structurelles actuelles. Les discriminations et le sous-développement qui se manifestent ont pour origine ce pillage orchestré de nos ressources humaines et naturelles. Par ailleurs, l'architecture de l'économie mondiale perpétue un système hérité de ces époques d'obscurantisme. C'est pourquoi la justice réparatrice n'est nullement une demande de charité ou de faveur. Il s'agit bien de rétablir un minimum de justice et d'équité pour des crimes commis. L'Union africaine et le CARICOM devront œuvrer à consolider cette solidarité pour un même combat, celui de la reconnaissance de ces crimes, de la repentance et des réparations. Il nous appartient de mettre en place un mécanisme conjoint, de coordonner nos efforts et faire avancer nos revendications sur la scène internationale. Au-delà de notre action collective liée aux réparations, il nous incombe aussi de promouvoir les investissements, le commerce, l'innovation et la recherche entre nos deux espaces. Le monde appartient aux nations productrices et commerçantes. L'Afrique et les Caraïbes représentent 1/5 de l'humanité et disposent d'un pouvoir réel d'influence et de ressources humaines et naturelles incomparables. Parlons donc d'une même voix sur toutes les plateformes internationales. Your Excellencies, let us jointly demand that former colonial powers acknowledge historic crimes, offer meaningful reparations, and dismantle structural and systemic injustice. This summit is a watershed moment and should be a turning point towards our collective aspiration. Historians will certainly put on record that from Addis Ababa, Africa and the Caribbean renewed their covenant to honor our ancestors, to uplift our descendants, and reclaim our shared destiny in freedom, justice, and unity. The African Union stands proudly and firmly with our Caribbean brothers and sisters in every step towards reparatory justice and true liberation. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement, as well as for your unwavering commitment towards Africa's development. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency Parfait Onanga Anyanga, Special Representative of the Secretary General to the African Union and Head of the United Nations Office to the African Union, on behalf of His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Your Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency Dr. Terence Duyo, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and Chair of the Caribbean Community, Your Excellency Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, our generous host, Your Excellencies, the heads of state and government, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency Carla Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, Your Excellency Selma Malika Haddadi, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellencies, the heads of delegations of African countries and Caribbean countries, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to convey warm greetings and best wishes from the Secretary General of the United Nations, your friend, Antonio Guterres, who regrets not being able to join you here today in beautiful Addis Ababa at the second Africa CARICOM Summit. This summit is rich in historical significance, bringing together in person for the first time leaders of the African continent and those of the African diaspora in the Caribbean. It is a unique opportunity to strengthen long-standing ancestral and cultural ties while exploring new areas of collaboration, including trade, investment, tourism, science, and technology. Your joint summit also illustrates the importance that the African Union and CARICOM attach to multilateralism. Multilateralism is indeed alive, embodied in the values, principles, and work of organizations such as the African Union and CARICOM, which, in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations, seeks to enhance international cooperation, to maintain international peace and security, and to develop friendly relations among nations. At last year's summit of the future, Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a better network and inclusive multilateral system, drawing on the expertise of all humanity. Your gathering illustrates best the true spirit of a network, inclusive, and people-centered multilateral system, which indeed underpins the Africa CARICOM Summit, for which the United Nations commends you. At this juncture, I wish to acknowledge the government of Benin for establishing a legal pathway for descendants of sub-Saharan Africans to formally reconnect with their ancestral homeland. This emblematic initiative illustrates the immense potential for deepening ties between African and Caribbean countries and people, including the African diaspora going forward. Excellencies, you are holding this important summit under the theme Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit of Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. In this connection, I would like to recall the statement of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the 30th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union, held in February this year here in Addis Ababa, in which he said, and I quote him, "The world must never forget that Africa," and to this I would like to add the Caribbean, "is the victim of two colossal compounded injustices. Firstly, the slave trade. The roots stretch back centuries, and the bitter fruit continues to affect Africans and people of African descent to this day. Decolonization alone in itself was not a panacea. Political independence did not free countries from structures based on exploitation and decades of economic, social, and institutional underinvestment. It is high time for reparatory justice frameworks to be put in place. Secondly, Africa and the Caribbean were under colonial domination when today's multilateral system was created, and that injustice endures. End of quote. Through your collective advocacy, this historical injustice is now widely acknowledged. The United Nations welcomes the growing consensus towards reforming global institutions such as the United Nations Security Council and the Bretton Woods institutions. The Secretary General has been and continues to be particularly vocal in this regard. Excellencies, people everywhere are hoping for a future of peace, dignity, and prosperity, which serves as a basis of common cause between Africa and the Caribbean. As the Secretary General noted, correcting age-old injustices is essential to addressing here and now challenges. And the good news is that we have many of the solutions we need, many of which feature in the Pact for the Future, adopted in September last year by the General Assembly. It should be a future that prioritizes dialogue and negotiation, ending the wars that are tearing our world apart, including by leveraging for the whole of humanity the immense potential presented by modern technologies such as artificial intelligence. It should also be a future ushering in a new era of relations between nations based on sovereign equality, collective peace and security, and shared prosperity in larger freedom. Excellencies, allow me, on behalf of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, to wish you productive deliberations. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Your leadership and role in reinforcing the Africa-Caribbean dialogue and cooperation are deeply appreciated. It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, João Lorenzo, President of the Republic of Angola and the current Chairperson of African Union, Your Excellency, Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and incoming Chair of CARICOM, esteemed heads of states and government, Your Excellency, Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency, Dr. Carla, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, my dear brothers and sisters from the Caribbean community, welcome home. It is with profound honor and deep pride that I welcome you to Ethiopia, a land where history lives and the future takes root. We gather in Addis Ababa, where the call for Adwa was answered and African unity found its first home. From here, the world is reminded of a truth too often forgotten. The spirit of our nations always rises. On this ground, where history was made, victory was won not by force, but by courage, not by empire, but by unity. That triumph did not belong to Ethiopia alone. It became a symbol of resistance, pride, and shared aspiration across continents and generations. Today, we're here to build upon that legacy. We often speak of reconnection, but what we are doing goes further. We are building a relationship deliberate, purposeful, and lasting. Excellencies, the world is changing. Voices once ignored are now demanding to be heard. In this new era, we cannot speak in fragments. We must speak as one. That's why the AU CARICOM partnership matters. It is rooted in opportunity, guided by frameworks that reflect today's reality. In a world where global challenges demand regional unity, and where regions like ours cannot act alone, there is clear alignment between us. On climate justice, our voices carry weight. In global governance, our demands are just. For inclusive growth, powered by innovation and use, our ambition converge. Across these issues, each region brings strengths. Africa brings scale, natural wealth, and boundless potential. The Caribbean brings strategic diplomacy, strong institutions, and resilient communities. Together, those strengths are multiplied. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia's path shows what is possible when unity meets deliberate action. We call this Madamar, synergy, the strength that comes when heads, hands, and hearts work as one. It is more than cooperation. It is a shared effort, a unity of purpose that turns idea into action and action into lasting change. This synergy drives national progress through connection, culture, innovation, knowledge, and unity. Connection links us. Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's largest carrier, links our continent to many corners of the world, bringing people, economies, and ideas together. Culture defines us. Our UNESCO-recognized festivals celebrate heritage, pride, identity, and creativity. Innovation drives us. Through the Green Legacy Initiative, we planted over 48 billion seedlings in 7 years, restoring ecosystems and creating jobs. Our climate resilient wheat initiative transformed imports into exports. Digital Ethiopia is opening new pathways for trade and finance. The local solutions grow our economy and strengthen self-reliance. Knowledge equips us. Ethiopian universities and leadership academies welcome students from across Africa, shaping skills, research, and capacity for the future. Unity empowers us. When Ethiopia speaks with one voice on climate, on debt, or trade, we deliver. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is proof of our strength when we unite. Born in the heart of millions, funded by our own people, built through their labor and sacrifice. It is a testament to shared vision, bold determination, and collective effort, a historic achievement for Ethiopia and for Africa. Excellencies, these forces, guided by Madamar, are the foundation for what we can build with the Caribbean. Geography may have placed us apart, but history has bound us together. Let us free ourselves from the language of charity, of recovery, of being called developing. Let us instead rise into something new and ours, where the waters that once divide us now unite us in dignity and prosperity. My dear brothers and sisters, Our experience, guided by the spirit of Muddamar, together with our collective innovations in energy, agriculture, digital technology, and knowledge, can be a bridge linking Africa and the Caribbean in shared prosperity. To turn vision into action and building on the commitments of the first Africa Union CARICOM Summit, I propose bridges of unity built on 4 pillars of impact. First, agriculture and digital innovation. Advancing climate-smart farming, tropical crop research, and resilient food systems paired with digital platforms, AI, and e-learning to amplify impact. Expanded renewable energy will green our farms, processing facilities, and trade. Second, innovation and collaboration. Creating hubs of entrepreneurship, digital infrastructure, and research, linking startups, universities, and institutions. That also means easing mobility, more accessible visas, expanded transport and logistics, making partnerships practical and possible. Third, culture and leadership. Expanding youth and leadership exchange, strengthening cultural and creative collaborations, not as a symbol, but as engines of identity, innovation, and opportunity. Fourth, knowledge and health. Building research networks to address tropical medicines, marine ecosystems, and climate, harnessing our collective knowledge to solve shared challenges and improve health outcomes. Through these bridges of unity, we link our universities, our economies, and our cultures, making distance no barrier to progress. Let us not be distracted by the challenges that surrounded us. Our regions have always faced adversity. What has changed is that we now choose to face it together, defining our own solutions and future. I thank each of you for your presence, your leadership, and your commitment to a more unified future. I wish you all a fruitful summit. Enjoy your stay in Ethiopia. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the generous hospitality extended to our Excellencies, heads of states and distinguished delegates. It is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Terence Drew, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, incoming Chair of CARICOM, to deliver his remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all. Let me first of all recognize Your Excellency Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of this great country, Your Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union. Let me also recognize Your Excellency Parfait Onanga Ayanga, Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General. Allow me also to recognize Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. And allow me to recognize also Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM. Other heads of delegation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. But allow me to also recognize, speaking on behalf of the Caribbean community, the Rastafari community of the Caribbean, who for many years has asked us to meet with our African brothers and sisters and forge a relationship that would ensure prosperity for our people. Today, as I stand here and came here by air, as I landed in this most beautiful country, it dawned on me that our history in the Caribbean did not start 400 years ago with the slave trade, but indeed we are connected to the cradle of civilization, the cradle of humanity, Africa, Ethiopia. It is indeed an absolute delight to greet you on behalf of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community at this second CARICOM Africa Summit being held in the Nelson Mandela Hall here at the headquarters of the African Union. Ethiopia, the land of origins, reflects the family ties and bonds shared between the people of the Caribbean community and the continent of Africa. While these linkages were forged from an exploitative and oppressive system that made a mockery of human rights, the Caribbean is proud of the strides made in strengthening these connections through Pan-African advocacy, the fight against apartheid, and closer social and cultural links between the people of Africa and the Caribbean, supported by the respective decisions of the African Union and the Caribbean community. Today's first in-person meeting, since we met virtually for the first time in 2021, is timely in reinforcing the bonds between Africa and the Caribbean, as well as in examining ways in which to deepen our partnership at the global and strategic levels. This will allow us to deepen South-South cooperation while fostering shared prosperity and affirming a common voice on global platforms, including on global peace, security, reform, and multilateral issues such as climate change. As we meet under the theme of transcontinental partnership in pursuit of reparatory justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, we are reminded of the important outcome from the first Africa CARICOM Summit hosted by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, on 7th September 2021. The Caribbean community expresses sincere thanks and its deep appreciation to His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of this great country, not only for the excellent arrangements and hospitality to us here in Addis, but also for the commitment made with the Honorable Mia Ahmad Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, to hold this second summit. This engagement will allow for broader discussion on the 2024 AU CARICOM Memorandum of Understanding on upscaling engagement and linkages with people of African descent, particularly the strengthening of interregional economic partnerships and enhanced people-to-people ties. We also convey our thanks to His Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, for the support given to this engagement. Excellencies, our discussions today should allow us to come to a common understanding and collaboration on a wide range of issues pertinent to our shared priorities. These include reparations, multilateral cooperation, reform of the international financial architecture, debt sustainability, finance, education, health, climate change, youth engagement, digital transformation and artificial intelligence, trade and investment, maritime and air transport, tourism, and cultural exchanges. What is clear is that closer collaboration between Africa and CARICOM is impatient. It's impatient of urgent attention and action in order to achieve positive outcomes for both our regions. Actions must be the underpinning sentiment of all that we do. Current global events demonstrate clearly that it is in the best interests of both Africa and the Caribbean to work together as developing regions. And I heard the word of my brother, President Ahmad, that we need to drop the term developing regions and convert that into something that represents what we are seeking to achieve. Commendations are due to African Bank, particularly under Professor Benedict Orama's leadership, as well as to numerous political and other leaders across Africa, who through concrete initiatives are encouraging trade, investment, cultural and sporting exchanges, and other collaborations between CARICOM and Africa. And I dare say that it has begun. To further propel our efforts, we need increased transportation linkages to reinforce our bonds, as our people should be able to travel freely and unabated to Africa and CARICOM. We need increased trade and investment, building on the experience, potential, and amplification of the culture, historical, and economic linkages between our regions. What was once a devastating tragedy for our people and for humanity, the transatlantic slave trade, should now be converted into the Atlantic Bridge, a bridge of hope, a bridge of advancement, a bridge that will ensure that our people take their rightful place in this world. Therefore, I call for more cooperation, more working together, and more advancement. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of this great continent, we are happy to be home again. We have the opportunity to rewrite historical outcomes and to be champions of our own destiny. CARICOM remains, therefore, committed to the CARICOM AU partnership on this 5th anniversary of Africa CARICOM Day, as we celebrate the enduring kingship and deepening partnership between our people, between the Caribbean community and Africa. Let us celebrate, but let this celebration be a demonstration of what we seek to achieve with this new, strong relationship that we are forging forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, after listening to what these people had to say, there is a lot we probably have gathered from this particular summit. And it happened on the 6th to the 7th of September. And the summit convened African and Caribbean heads of state along with global partners under the theme Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit for Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. And basically, that is what many, many Black people have been talking about, since the beginning of time. And the main goals included reaffirming political and diplomatic solidarity, adopting a joint communique, promoting dialogue across thematic areas, and strengthening institutional links in trade, transport, culture, and of course, much more. So the major agreements that we might have noted from this particular summit were the joint communique and partnership framework as being the first one that I personally took note of. And the leaders endorsed a joint communique that outlined shared development priorities, global policy alignments, and the creation of a transcontinental partnership framework, of course, between Africa and the descendants of Africa. We're talking about the Americas, as well as Europe, and far and wide, wherever the descendants of Africa or Black people are. And the second agenda that came out clearly here was reparatory justice as an agenda. So reparations and reparatory justice stood at the summit's core, building AU's 2025 theme and institutionalizing a continental partnership framework between AU, CARICOM, and the wider African diaspora. You know, when we talk about the African diaspora, we're not only limited to the Americas. We have the African diaspora as well as in Europe. And of course, currently there is the African diaspora, a big African community in Asia as well. So this summit actually was really centered around reparatory justice for Africans and the descendants of Africa. So, and then they also talked a lot about trade, transport, and regulation integration. So the commitments were made to abolish double taxation, where you get taxed in one country within the same region, and it makes it so hard to do business. Even intra-African trade is made so complex with the fact that we don't have commitments like to abolish this kind of taxation, where you get taxed as a business person in the country you're living, and you also get taxed for the same kind of business, the same kind of product in the country you're going to enter. And then another commitment was to launch a multilateral air services agreement for regular direct flights between Africa and the Caribbean. Very key, very important. And one of the most heartbreaking scenarios is the fact that to move from one African country to another, sometimes you have to go to Europe so you can connect back to Africa. It's not just ironical in itself, but it's shameful. If you want to go to Jamaica as an African, sometimes from a given African country, you might have to go to Europe, then to connect to Jamaica. And and another point under the trade, transport, and regulatory integration, we had the review of visa-free travel, aiming to ease movement across regions. This has also been another cancer amongst countries of Black people, amongst Africa, the Caribbeans, in which and Pan-Africanists have actually been talking about abolishing borders within the African continent and the African diaspora, and make it visa-free, or at least make it so easy, visas on arrival for all Africans. And it seems that's now getting into these governance circles, and this is the right direction. Another agenda, before we digress so much, was the public-private partnership and infrastructure initiative. So a dedicated African CARICOM public-private partnership, PPE, will mobilize funds for infrastructure and strategic projects spanning renewable energy, tech, creative industries, education, tourism, and cultural exchanges. It's time that we Black people stood for ourselves, because what you have noticed is whenever we solicit for help, it comes with too much unsustainable conditions. How about we started, because this is how everybody else that we apparently try to seek help from started, coming together, putting our energies and our resources and our thoughts together and help ourselves. Nobody will help you if you cannot help yourself. So basically what we are talking about here is that it's time for us to come together. It's time for us as Africans and descendants of Africa need to come together, because for centuries, Africa and her descendants have been pushed, to margins of global affairs, divided by slavery, weakened by colonization, and silenced in international decision-making circles. Africa and her diaspora have carried the weight of exclusion, but today, the winds are changing. But today, a new global order is rising, in which we as Africans and we as Africa must actually rise with it. So the AU CARICOM partnership is not just a diplomatic gesture, it's a historical correction. For too long, Africa has been isolated from her children across the seas, while both continents suffer, or while both regions, have suffered under the same chains of slavery, exploitation, and racial injustices. How about we now stand together to say, we cannot endure this. We are not taking this anymore. So this unity is crucial now because the world is entering a new era. As a global power becomes, multipolar, Africa and her diaspora must actually rise, and not just rise, but rise together, not as spectators, but as key players or architects of the future and of our own future. So together, Africa and the Caribbeans can actually demand for reform of global governance so our voices count at the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, and if our voices are not to be heard in these institutions, then we can as well quit from being part of these institutions. So again, build independent trade and economic power, breaking centuries of dependence on former colonizers, So stand strong in the fight for climate justice as the regions most devastated, yet we are the least responsible for the global, for the climate mess that the world is facing in today. We're the most affected, but we're the biggest victims, but we have played the least into creating the mess that we suffer in today. Now, lead the call for reparations and historical justice, forcing the world to confront the crimes of slavery and colonialism. If we don't speak, nobody really wants us to even engage in these conversations. And we have noticed that whenever Black people demand for justice, historical justice to what the world has done to Black people, people want to portray us as playing victims. Actually, when these are lived experiences, actually when all the other people that have been oppressed, because we are not the only oppressed people historically, are getting reparations, are getting recognition and apologies, and fair treatment. But whenever Black people come out to speak against what happened to them historically, then people turn a blind eye. It's now time that we put our Black voices together, from Africa to America, to Europe, to North and South America, across the world, and say the world has to pay attention to what happened to Africa, her descendants, and all Black people across the world. And reparations are due, long overdue, in fact. So it's also time to reclaim our Pan-African identity, healing the divisions that colonizers have created between Africa and the descendants of Africa, and purpose for a unity of purpose. So actually, my conclusion to this is the AU's recognition of the diaspora actually as the sixth region, because we have Northern Africa, Western Africa, Eastern Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, those are 5, and the African diaspora as the sixth region is just more than symbolic. It's a call to rebuild global Black unity, one people, one destiny. In this critical moment of history, Africa and all African descendants must seize the rightful place at the center of global changes, because when Africa rises, the world and the world power must shift. Yeah, I don't know what you could have gathered from the video, from what we have had, what we have basically learned from this summit, or what you think about this very symbolic meeting. I would love to get to know what you think about it. You can leave me a comment in the comment section below. And if you like this video, if you like what I am doing, you can support this channel by actually giving it a thumbs up, share it as well. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And my final call is, we Black people must now purpose, aim, forget about the distractions, but aim at a unity of purpose. And this is just the beginning. If we add more stakeholders, more players into this fight, then we're definitely going to win this fight together. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out and one love.